Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ruth Del Pino, and today we are here to talk about how to help anxiety at home. And we are going to be talking about life skills training and some of the things that are implemented through life skills training that we do with our students. So a little bit about me. I used to be the Trent Municipal Alliance Coordinator at the Mercer Council. I shifted to Program Coordinator for the Mercer County Grant. I'm a prevention educator. I have a BA in Global Studies, Political Science, and American Studies, and a certificate in leadership from Ramada University. I am certified to teach life skills and teaching English as a foreign language. I am helping raise two girls that are pre-adolescent and middle school age, so I know I look young, but it is just sort of the way that things worked out. So I will be using a lot of that to inform my own opinions. But also sort of the way that this is structured today. So I always start with this. Why this presentation? Why this particular set of rules and set of, the way I say things? This is not to scare you. This is to inform you. This is also not a parenting class. You are the best parent for your child. You know them the best. They are exactly who they need to be, and you are exactly who you need to be. And it all comes from a place of love. So if you're here, then that means that you wanna know more. Perspective. My approach is based and shaped through my learning experiences. So that means that a lot of what I do tends to be related to what I've learned at the job, what I've done research with, how Mercer Council sort of informs a lot of that policy and evidence-based stuff. This is evidence-informed and some evidence-based, so that means that this is not technically an evidence-based program, but it is something that is evidence-informed. So basically, I do the research for you, and I introduce concepts that hopefully you can integrate into your everyday life. So we're going to start with first, what does anxiety and stress look like in children? This is a very interesting concept because it can be a lot of things, right? But I've sort of noticed that within the research and with a lot of children that we've been working with, this is sort of what is broken down, right? So I have a stomach ache. Is usually something that younger children say when they have no idea how they're carrying their stress. I know in myself, whenever I get nervous or excited, it's usually in my stomach. I don't want to go to school. Maybe they're avoiding something. Maybe they're stressed out over going to school or a test. I can't sleep. Maybe they're thinking about too many things. Yelling because maybe they have so much anxiety or stress they don't know how to express it. Pacing. Just so that they can get some of their energy out when they are that way. Hyperactive, so maybe jumping up and down the walls. Crying is also a big one. And I have a coworker, Melissa Arnold, who also does nurtured heart approach training, and it is something that the Mercer Council offers. And it's really interesting in that Melissa talks about children wanting parents to be toys. And what I mean by that is they want your attention, they want your energy, they want your ability to sort of be like, I'm here for you kind of thing. So if they push the right buttons and you give them a loud response, it may not be what they wanted, but it could be something that they were looking for. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we can diagnose stress and anxiety. Doctors can't readily diagnose something like this until a lot of children are more into their formative years. So if you have a 5 or 6 year old and they say she or he has anxiety, that doesn't necessarily mean they do. But it's just something that obviously you should consult a doctor with before saying that your child has anxiety. But stress and anxiety really do present themselves the same way in children. Stress and anxiety can present themselves differently these days because of where we're at and what we're doing. So wearing masks is not normalized. If it's not normalized in the household, then it can be something that's stressful to go out into everyday life because they don't know what's going on. Going to school during a pandemic is very difficult. I can't imagine what it's like to sort of feel like you're constantly being threatened with something. Being bullied in school or online, we're more online recently, so it can definitely contribute to that factor. And feeling like there's no end to something. So do they feel like they're at a place where they can end and they can no longer be in this pandemic? Do they feel like they're able to be present? Are they able to be provided for? These are all things that really do feel uncertain. And the other thing about children is they absorb stress. Children are sponges. They are very perceptive, and they don't know exactly what's wrong, but they will know something is wrong. They can feel it. That's just the way children are. They really do have a really impressive sixth sense when it comes to this kind of thing. So just keep that in mind moving forward when we are going through our activities. So one way to help children with stress is building a coping kit. What is a coping kit? A coping kit really is introduced to a lot of adults that are in sort of any sort of anxiety training or anything like that, or getting through some sort of mental illness or some sort of mental condition. Deep breathing is a big thing. Progressive muscle relaxation. Stressful, these are great when you just need something to do with your hands. Write it out. Maybe you're just so stressed and there's no one in the room or no one's going to understand what you're saying and you just need to get it down. Write it out is good. Talk back to worries and reframe thoughts. So it's basically talking back to worries and saying that this may hurt me right now, but it won't hurt me later. Or talking about your worries in that I feel like this, but I don't always feel like this. So it sort of gives you some perception here. And getting help from an adult. This is something that could be very helpful for children, especially when they are going through something that doesn't feel very in their control. So what makes their anxiety different? Their brains are still developing, and that's a huge part. They're still in their formative years. And depending on the age, it really could be something detrimental to them that seems very small to an adult, but very large to a child. Because their brains are still developing, they have less experience for them to refer to know that things are going to be okay. We've lived through things to be like, all right, that was terrible, but I lived through it. Or that wasn't very nice, but at least it's over. They don't have that kind of conception. They don't have those kinds of concepts because they're not necessarily something that they've been through yet. So we are going to be watching a video about children sort of explaining their own anxieties. And I just found it interesting because it is something that is so prevalent, and we don't see children as having this sort of these sorts of perceptions, but it is something that I thought we could have a go at.
I feel like one of the most stressful parts of like my life so far has been the first semester of 6th grade. You can feel sad, scared, angry. It's your brain that's sad, that's an anxiety. Depression, it's not just like sadness, it's like a lot of things. It's stress and tiredness.
You could be stressed for like not really a good reason. You're just like overwhelming yourself.
When someone took my toy and didn't give it back even on Monday.
When my grandma's dog died, I felt sad.
His name was Snaggle. He died at like 15, I think. They had to put him down. We got to pet him a bit. I was pretty upset.
Like you have no energy when you're depressed and you're just like, don't want to do anything.
I make a mad face when I'm mad and angry.
My breath gets really, really fast. My heart beats really fast.
I feel like my stomach starts hurting.
All I want to do is just forget all of this.
Play a game that they wanted to play.
Even if I don't like to play that game.
If it seemed like really serious, I'd like tell them a grown up.
Like just take a couple deep breaths.
I hugged a stuffed animal.
Squish a pillow like this, but you'd get kind of like a little more mad.
I have this special book at home that helps me overcome my anxiety. They call worries bullies. They always say to lock up the worry in an imaginary box.
I say, cheer up.
Don't get too down on yourself because that's going to make everything worse.
Talk to people, like someone that you can trust, someone that will listen.
Tell somebody because it's not going to get any better if you don't.
She always cuddles with me and she tells me everything's gonna be okay.
Usually like snuggle me and like let us have a family movie night at nighttime. If she like notices I'm like kind of feeling down or something, she'll be like, you can talk to me or your dad or anybody or people like that about anything.
My parents, my grandparents, like you can talk to me whenever something's on your mind.
Mostly it's because kids don't tell their parents. They need to keep them, they need to tell them more about what's going on in their life so they can know how to help you.
Okay, so I really like that video just because it lets us know kind of where children are at, right? And that just because their worries are small to us doesn't mean they're not worries for them at all. And I hope that if you're looking into any videos or any sort of resources, that's a really great resource. I can share the resource if anyone needs it. So when we were talking about coping skills, the best way to have the tools is to just do them with the children. Sometimes when there are moments where they see that it be an end-all be-all, there has to be things for them to mitigate their fight or flight response, right? So if they're really starting to feel as if this is the end of the world, what do you do when you are panicking about something? What do you do differently? And I think that helps us reframe our minds to realize that children really do express their anxiety and sadness in the same way that adults can sometimes. So with the video specifically, they are explaining what anxiety and sadness is. And there are a lot of things that we can look at for them to say that we should be talking to our parents, we should be talking to our children about these sorts of things so that it's not necessarily that scary. It's something that can be approached. It's something that can be mitigated. And it's not a sad moment for them to come to you if they're anxious. I think it's a very proud moment that we can all have, right? So I have some anxiety coping methods. The first one is actually called the tapping solution. It's actually from the Tapping Solution YouTube channel. Tapping is something that's kind of been introduced in a lot of different concepts. It is something associated with EMDR. And I'm so sorry, I don't know exactly how to pronounce EMDR, but essentially it's a form of therapy that associates your brain with good memories or sort of shifting how you go through your day-to-day, and tapping is part of that. It helps a lot of people get through trauma. In a study that integrated tapping, there were improved symptoms of 90% of patients compared to 63% of CBT patients. CBT is cognitive-based therapy, which means really it's just talking. It helps people talk through their problems. So tapping is definitely something that can be that can be used. It is something that is useful. And I do have a video on this as well. And I hope that it is helpful in some concept for people to integrate into their everyday life, for children especially. And this particular YouTube channel is meant for children. And it is called The Tapping Solution. So I hope that this can be helpful to someone.
We start with the side of the
This
hand
is for
called the
children,
karate chop
so
point.
they're going to help.
It's easy to remember because it's
They
just like a
explain
karate chop. Next is the eyebrow point. We can remember it by calling this the hairy eyebrow point. I pretend that I have eyebrows so big that birds can land on them and sing songs to make me feel better. Then there's the side of the eye point, which I remember by calling it the super eagle eye point. When I tap here, I pretend I have super eagle eyes that let me see things in a different way. Next is the under eye point, or the lion cry point. This reminds me that even if you're strong like a lion, it is okay to cry and let feelings out. Then there's the under the nose point, the dragon fire point. I breathe out my bad feelings just like a dragon breathes fire out of its nose. Next is the chin point, or the wolf's chin point. When I tap here, I'm like a wolf howling away the feelings that are bothering me. Then comes the collarbone, which I think of as the gorilla thumb point. When I tap here, it's like I'm a big, proud gorilla beating on my chest. Next is the underarm point. I like to call this the bear hug point, because when I tap here, I think about giving myself a lot of love with a bear hug. The last tapping point is the top of the head point. I call this the monkey point. This one's a silly one that makes me feel like a monkey, and then I laugh. Those are all of the tapping points. While we tap, we also talk at the same time. This helps us remember what is bothering us and to help us solve the problem or to feel calm. Let's try it out. I'll tap first, then you repeat.
Okay, so I'm not going to be going through the particulars of the tapping solution, but it is something that can be really helpful. And adults usually do it with their children just because it's easy for children to follow adults when they have more examples. And it could also be something for adults. It's very much a part of any sort of therapy. And because you are doing the tapping, it's the association with your brain with physical touch. So and if nothing else, it is something else to concentrate on. So I feel that that could be something that could really help when children feel that they may be a little bit more anxious or nervous about something, especially the day before a big test. It can usually be helpful. Writing it out, encouraging them to write. We were talking about the coping skills and coping kits before, but we have some different coping methods that you can integrate into that coping kit. Writing it out and encouraging them to write in whatever capacity, whether they keep a journal, whether they just write it on a piece of paper, and also when they write it out, giving them as much privacy as possible when they're writing it out. When you are writing and it's very personal, sometimes you just don't want people to know, right? And I think that affording children that kind of privacy is very encouraging to them understanding their own feelings and possibly bringing it to you when they feel they've mulled over a lot of the negativity or a lot of the vulnerability, and they're finally ready to share. And that moment could be very, very nice and very helpful, but also bring you two closer together. Going outside is obviously one of them. I'm going for a walk just to get your heart moving, to breathe some fresh air. My nieces are truly into soccer. That's something they love to do. So if they're not in here doing their homework or on video games, they are outside with soccer. And they're always playing together and throwing the ball around, and it usually does help. And in the process, playing outside with them, they usually use that to have conversations with each other about things that are bothering them throughout the day. So I think it could also be something that children usually need some sort of other kinetic stimulation. So when they are sort of moving through physical actions, they can also talk while they're doing it. So that I think that's very helpful. My niece in particular, she's in middle school right now, so music is a huge part of her life. It is something that um, she can't really live a day without listening to music. It is something that is really part of her daily routine. And I think that music should always be welcomed and has a place in every sort of coping kit for anything in particular. We all know that calm music can sort of help us get through things. They have delta waves on YouTube for us to fall asleep to if we ever have trouble. But really, any kind of music that children really find that speaks to them, that's usually okay for them to listen to, unless it's really inappropriate, right? But I think that the important part is that when you are listening to music, I believe that there are so many moments where we're listening to a song and we're listening to it so thoroughly, and we realize that this artist has put thoughts and feelings into something that we didn't have words for, right? So when we have music, it sort of helps us sort of process through those feelings. And for children, it can be the same exact way, even more so because their vocabulary usually is more limited, especially when it comes to their feelings vocabulary, right? So I really think that music can be a huge part of mitigating any harm through stress. So in life skills in particular, we do a lot of reframing. We teach a lot of children how to reframe. So reframing is really just looking at the reality from a different point. So for example, you have a doctor's appointment that you've been waiting on and it was canceled. So you can reframe it and say, all right, it's canceled. I sort of swept out my day to go to this doctor's appointment, but now I have time to do something that I wanted to do. Or now I have time to spend time with my family. Or now I have time to do X, Y, Z. So reframing to a point where children use one thing and then view it differently can be very helpful in them understanding this process. Here, I just have another website that I think could be helpful for children in general, just so that they can use it, that you can help looking at resources with anxiety for your children. And it does talk through a lot of strategies to help your anxious children. And it sort of goes step by step. And obviously it's better to do it and keep doing it. But when you need guidance, this is something that can be very helpful if you are doing something for the first time. So they have a lot of different explanations. So I think that it can be useful in that aspect as well. And this is a really good resource for people who are looking for anything mental health related. So there's that. So we have that. And now we had anxiety coping methods, and in life skills training, when we are going through stress and anxiety, we go straight from, this is straight from the life skills, but we do a lot of different breathing techniques with them for them to understand mindfulness and to be able to calm themselves down in a situation where they may not be able to, right? So we have the 4-4-4 breathing method, and I use this often with my niece who suffers from social anxiety. So really what it is breathing in for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds. And you do that as many times. I usually do it 4, 5, 6 times, depending on how anxious she feels. And it really does help. What the concept is just trying to get your heart rate at a place where your body isn't panicking. Even if your brain is, at least your body isn't panicking. So then you can finally convince your brain that things are going to be okay. So it sort of mitigates that fight or flight response. So the example will be 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we do this a lot with students, and I think it is very helpful. It's something that doesn't, there's no harm in trying to do it, right? And you can do it anywhere, anytime. So I have a YouTube video here, but I'm going to be playing that last. So there's also something called that we teach progressive muscle relaxation. We instruct them how to tense up their bodies really tight and then untense them. So it's sort of like doing a body check where they're sitting down and sort of going through their whole bodies. What hurts, what doesn't, where's the tension? Is their back hurting from sleeping a certain way? Is their arm not feeling okay today? There are things that they can sort of do a body check with. And while they're looking at these things and while they're going through their body, they are tensing and then untensing to just let it go. And this progressive muscle relaxation really just starts at the feet and moves its way up to the head and the upper part of the body. So it's really just them imagining their body getting more and more relaxed. And what I do see in a lot of the children is that, especially after the life skills classes, some of them will really get into this concept, right? And then all of a sudden, they have math next period, or they have English, and it's just such a tense thing. And then you can sort of see them tense back up. But during those moments where they're with us and in that moment and breathing and going through the muscle relaxation, they really, in some ways, do turn into what kind of resembles Jell-O. And they sort of just flop around a little bit while they're going through these exercises. Another thing, we usually end with progressive muscle relaxation. We start with the breathing method, or I do rather. And something that can be really helpful with people who have a lot of anxiety, they tend to have anxiety about things that are hard for them to get through, right? So hard for them to get through, meaning tests, possibly having a hard conversation with someone, confronting a teacher. All those kinds of things are very difficult, right? So preparation and practice are key. So they come up with their own scenarios, and then they write down their responses, and we sort of go through the responses with them so that they have some sort of rehearsed preparation for their event, right? So for example, they say, I'm having a really hard time with this test. I've studied, I don't know what else to do. And it's just preparation and practice. So we say, well, you've already prepped. You've done what you need to do. You've already practiced. So you've done all the questions. All you can do now is wait and just accept whatever sort of absoluteness is going to happen. So we also have mental rehearsal. This is something that you sort of just go through in your brain, where you're just like, all right, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through this. So it helps children sort of come into their own and decide, all right, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I have decided to do this particular scenario. So this mental rehearsal really does just introduce them into one thing and then going to the other concept, or going through the day for it. And the mental rehearsal really does just train your brain to be less expectant of the next thing. So it really just helps with the mitigation of a lot of the big feelings anxiety can come with. And the other thing is positive thinking. This is something that we do teach them a lot. Whenever you're thinking something negative that you can't change, it's something that sort of we train them to do, where they can put a big stop sign in front of their in their head, right? When they say, oh, I'm not good enough for this. And then they're like, no, stop. If there are things that you can't change, if there are things that you can't improve on, then just stop. Just have the reality that, I refuse to think of something negative that's going to hurt me, and I'm going to spin it into something positive. And it could possibly be an example of, I don't think I'm good enough for this. I don't think I'm good enough to, win the classroom election, right? And you can say, you know what, stop. You've tried your hardest. You campaigned the best you could, and that's all you can do. And you did your best, and that's all you can ask for. So it sort of reframes that thinking of saying, I'm not good enough, to you are as good and as best as you are in this moment, and there is nothing wrong with that. So I think that it can be very helpful for children that have a lot of self-esteem issues as well. So I have here a YouTube video that is actually called Cosmic Kids Yoga. And it is a great YouTube channel solely focused around mindfulness for children. It is I believe it's based through Australia, if I'm not mistaken. So the accent could be a little bit hard for some people, but I feel like it is still something that can be used.
Everyone, welcome to the Cosmic Kids Zen Den, our place for helping our minds be healthy, strong, and happy. Sit yourself comfortably and take a big, deep breath. Clear your mind, let your body settle, and enjoy the space you have right now to tap into yourself. As you come to the Zen Den more and more, you are mastering the most important thing to learn, understanding yourself and how to be happy and enjoy your life. Now, I wonder if you can think of a time when you've had to perform in some way. Maybe you've had to speak, act, or sing or dance in front of other people. Or you've had to play a big sports game at school. Or you've had to take an important test. You know it's coming up, the days are ticking by, and soon you have to do it. This can feel exciting, but also a little bit frightening. This is what it means to feel nervous. Perhaps you are worried about being looked at, or whether what you do will be good enough. Perhaps you worry about what everyone watching will think about you when you do it. Close your eyes if you like, and try to remember a time like this when you've had to do something.
Okay. So I just wanted to introduce the channel. It is also something that I feel like they use language that is very appropriate for children. There's no jargon there. There's nothing that is hard for them to understand. It is something that is just easily graspable for a lot of different age groups. So I feel like it could definitely be something in the toolkit for children when they want to do something that's a little bit more mindful and not just straightforward. If they want to spend 10, 15 minutes doing a yoga video where they just mindfully breathe and understand their own bodies and their responses to nervousness, it could be very helpful for them. So children in general really are, as I said before, sponges. So surrounding them with good thoughts, having good affirmations around them in the house. For example, in our house, we have different affirmations on the mirror for my nieces saying, you will always be beautiful. This mirror doesn't mean that you, like what you see in the mirror doesn't necessarily give you worth. You are beautiful the way you are. Allow yourself to breathe, things like that. So I have teacher friends that have this in their classrooms. Children often have it in their rooms too. If they're really into mental health, if they're really into finding things that help them cope with their anxiety or any sort of mental health issues, they help. It helps them to sort of visually see words that are reaffirming and affirmations that really drive forward any positive feelings that they may have. So I have here something that I actually have on my wall specifically, and an anxiety, it's anxiety coping statements. And some of them are, I tune into my body and release from my muscles. And while you're breathing, you can sort of really do these affirmations. I am okay. My anxiety is not always rational. When I relax and sit with this feeling, I learn to face my fears, things like that. So it really, if you have anything or any sort of, it can turn it into an art project. It can just be something that's done. It can be on Post-its. It can be, as creative and as artistic as you want it to be. And I feel like it's a really good project for children and a really good project for parents to sort of get to know their child and what works for them and what doesn't. Affirmations don't work for everybody, but affirmations can be very helpful to children's well-being if it's done correctly. And I especially like this one. I always say this for my children especially. I'm stronger than I give myself credit for. I always survive this. So it helps them understand that when they're going through something that's hard, when they're going through something that's not very happily exciting, it's still something that they are able to get through. So I always like that, and I encourage other people who are taking care of children or in any capacity around children to at least do some affirmations with them while you're around them and they're experiencing nervousness. Reassurance, I'd really just have more articles, what to do and what not to do when your children are anxious. This is also another good organization. The Child Mind Institute especially, they have, it says recursos en español, they have resources in Spanish as well. So it's very helpful for people who don't just speak English. And it kind of gives you a step-by-step, right? And it says here, especially I like this one, the goal isn't to eliminate anxiety, but it's to help a child manage it. So adults really are hands-on in managing their child's anxiety and processes, right? It's not something that we can just sort of negate responsibility from. And this is a great resource because of that. And there really is some great advice on here. So I have actually a flu shot story when I was taking my niece to get her flu shot. And limit their exposure to technology. Their source of stress may be being too close to the screen. So that's also something as well. I always have to put that in there. So I'm referring back to my flu shot / HPV shot story. And my niece hates needles. I don't think a lot of children like needles. There are helpful things to say. There are a lot more helpful things than I hear you and letting them have their space. But I feel like it's really hard to say what is helpful to your child unless you know your child. So I didn't put too much down, but there are definitely not helpful things to say. And so going through this story with my niece when she got her needle or her flu shot, she was so scared. She was so anxious. There were things that she really couldn't wrap her mind around. She says, "Why do I need it? Like, why do I need it?" So calmly explaining to them why they need it and what's good for them is important. But it also is something that helps them in the process of, saying, all right, I need this because of X, Y, and Z. And I will sort of refer to it in the later slides, but really what she needed was just for someone to hold her hand the whole time. And she sort of needed someone there for it, and then she needed someone there after it. So really, it's just sort of the care that happens after any sort of big event in their lives that they're really stressed out about. But I will refer back to that story on the next slide, but there are not helpful things to say as well. I have a website here that just lists a bunch of things that you really shouldn't say to your children when they're going something so anxious. This is also from SciComm. I feel like it's a very helpful resource saying, don't worry, it's no big deal. You'll be fine. There's nothing to be afraid of. I'll do it. It's all in your head. Hurry up. Children are anxious beings to begin with. Get over it. You are so frustrating. You need to suck it up. You're making our lives difficult. Calm down. Those are all things that are not helpful to children as they feel that their lives are sort of being turned over with the thing that they're being stressed about, right? So sort of making sure that we use words that are important, use words that don't hurt, use words that are good and right. And we're not always going to get it right, but I strongly encourage that if you say something wrong, that if you say something that hurts your child's feelings, to say, I'm sorry, I had a lot of big feelings back there. That must have been scary for you, and it wasn't directed at you. I'm also stressed about some things myself, and I just want to make sure that you are okay. So the follow-up is truly important. I think that that's always something that we can do to have follow-up and make sure that even if we didn't get it right in the moment, that we mitigate anything that bad may happen afterwards. Being there with them is truly important. I learned that love languages really do play a part in the way that I interact with my nieces. Being there while the videos are being played that I shared is really important. Being there when they're going through something and looking for different methods of combating their anxiety, whether or not you're exploring it with them. And also the 5 love languages of children is really important too. This was written by Gary Chapman. It's the most famous one, but there are so many books on this. And really what their love language can be depends on, how you've interacted with them, but physical touch, time spent together, acts of service, receiving gifts and words of affirmation. A lot of the time when children have anxiety, they can feel like they're not loved, or they can feel like they're not good in that moment. And to sort of have those love languages just puts a cushion underneath any sort of negative feelings they may have towards themselves. So for example, in my niece's flu shot story, where she was very anxious, she just wanted someone to hold her hand the whole time, which means one of her love languages, especially a really important one for her, is physical touch, which means she likes hugs, she likes sitting next to me, she likes holding my hand, things like that. And it really did help. Acts of service could also be, well, if you get through this, we could go to, not acts of service, receiving gifts. If you get through this flu shot, then we can go out, pick your favorite toy at the toy store, something like that. Something small, not something grandiose, but something small. Words of affirmation could be, you did so well. I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for being so awesome. So there could be a lot of different things for that as well. And that's also touched upon in the Nurtured Heart approach with Melissa Arnold as well. So that's just something I wanted to put out there in case anyone wanted to do any of the love languages. And we are at the end of our presentation, but I really feel like it's important to reiterate that, especially with children, when you're feeling anxious, remember that you're still you are not your anxiety. There are a lot of times where children may feel like it runs their life, like it's something that is uncontrollable, something that they can't control at all. But I think with children especially, we can't do that. And we are the ones that can help take away some of that pain that they may feel. So that's all I have for today. I don't see any questions in the chat box. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for, just being curious, and have a great day. Bye.